Hello, everybody. I wanted to do a little show on the psyche from the Gurdjieff point of view, of course. I've been looking at All and Everything, Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson, and it says quite a lot about the psyche in there. What is the psyche? What do you think it is? Where is it? Are we developing it? Or is it something that's just running wild without any control from us? Or is it our essence? Is it our spirit? Is it the part of us? I think Jung talks about it being part of our conscience. I might have that wrong there, actually. I shouldn't have brought Jung into it. But anyway, some Gurdjieff from page 321 of All and Everything. At the time of my first arrival there in this center of culture of theirs, so this is the fifth planet, the fifth flight to the Earth, and he's coming onto the Persian Gulf into Babylon. So at the time of my first arrival there in this center of culture of theirs, they were just preparing that which was afterwards the principal cause of the acceleration of the rate of the degeneration of their psychic organization, especially in the sense of the atrophy in them of the instinctive function of those three fundamental factors, which ought to exist in the presence of every free brain being, namely those factors which give rise to the being impulses existing under the names of faith, hope, and love. You know, and in ancient times, Babylon was the center of culture, apparently, according to our history books, and Gurdjieff saying that here. As we know, we've got a lot of the old Babylonian epics, and Gurdjieff was very attuned to the story of Gilgamesh, which his father used to recite. And, you know, just knew it, had memorized. And it wasn't until, I think it was the early 1900s, that the first written version of Gilgamesh was discovered. And when Gurdjieff read the translation, it's like, this is just what my father was saying. So all them years, his father and the Ashoks before him, all those that were retelling the stories, were orally sending down that tradition. Anyway, back to the psyche. It was so Gurdjieff is saying during the Babylonian time that our psyche became disorganized and wasn't working, or began to not be being used with the three main attributes that he's talking about here: faith, hope, and love. You know, and I've had people say to me, no, it's faith, hope, and charity. Well, to Gurdjieff, it's faith, hope, and love. Love is the thing that we should be putting forward, though he does talk about charity as well. Charity is an important part of it. And obviously we need our faith, because we're here to do the work, to connect us with the divine source, his endlessness in Gurdjieff's name. And we have to live in hope that we are doing this kind of work. Hope is what keeps us going. If there is no hope, as John Cleese reminds us, there is just despair. So I was also reminded in the week that despair is really when you're not being allowed to be who you should be. So if you're feeling in a state of despair, check that you're not being put down or suppressed to be who you are supposed to be, who you really are. And we live in hope that we can become the people we are supposed to be. So it's talking about the function of these three fundamental factors that ought to exist in the presence of every free brain being. These being factors degenerating by heredity from generation to generation has brought it about that instead of a real being psyche, such as should exist in the presence of every kind of free brain being, there now already exists in the presence of your contemporary favorites. Although a real psyche, and he puts it in quotation marks, a real psyche also, nevertheless, one that can be very well defined by one of the wise sayings of our dear Mullah Nasir Eddin, which consists of the following words: there is everything in it except the core, even the kernel. There is everything in it except the core or even the kernel. So this real psyche is being changed and losing its reasoning, its attributes. It's losing the reason why we have a psyche. It's losing its base essence, its kernel, the seed that is what our essence should be growing from. It's being corrupted and as he's saying here, degenerated. It's being taken on a different path by the people of that time, which has continued up into this time. So we have a misunderstanding of what our psyche should be. It is absolutely necessary to relate to you in as great detail as possible what occurred during that period in Babylon, as all this information may be valuable material for you for a better elucidation and transubstantiation in your reason of all the causes which together have finally given rise to that strange psyche of the free-centered beings, which your contemporary favourites already have. Of course, the contemporary favourites are us humans. It's what Hussein loved us humans. You know, and he sticks up for us later in the book, young Hussein, the grandson. And of course, we're the grandchildren of Gurdjieff, so we're trying to understand why it is that our psyche has become disorientated, is not growing in the way it should be. You know, that's why we're reading this book. And All and Everything has all and everything in it. He explains the history of why we went downhill instead of evolving. He says we're devolving. So I wanted to do this little show about the psyche because I'm trying to help you discover what your psyche is, and at the same time I'm trying to decipher my own, of course. I must first of all tell you that I obtained the information concerning the events of that time, which I'm about to relate, chiefly from those free-centered beings there, whom the other beings called learned. And we've got to remember that we are led astray by people these days who say they are learned. We're trying to find the real learned people, you know, the real teachers that can tell us what it is we need to know. I don't know if there's many of them out there. Which is why I always say, go and read the book and learn from that. Go and fathom the gist yourself. But remember that the cabal that run this world, they pretend they're learned, but they're not. They're one-centered. Really, it's all about themselves. Before going any further, I must here dwell a little on just what kind of beings there on your planet the other beings call learned. The point is that even before this fifth sojourn of mine there, that is to say, before that period when Babylon, as I have told you, flourished in every respect, those beings who became learned and were regarded by others as learned were not such beings as become and are regarded as learned everywhere in the universe, nor such as first become learned even on your planet, namely such beings as acquired by their conscious labours and intentional sufferings the ability to contemplate the details of all that exists from the point of view of world arising and world existing, owing chiefly to which they perfect their highest body to the corresponding gradation of the sacred measure of objective reason, in order that they might later sense as much about cosmic truths as their higher being body is perfected. And that's what we're working towards, objective reason, objective understanding of the whole universe and our role in it. This is what our psyche should be aiming towards. I've talked before about our aims, and Gurdjieff discusses our aims. We have little aims to get us going, get us moving along the path, up the ladder. And those aims can become, as we progress and achieve those aims, we then go on to the higher aims, the bigger aims. So hopefully become the learned beings that we are supposed to be, instead of the dumbed down part of the mass culture that there is out there. You know, we know the cabal want to keep us all dumbed down. They probably find people like ourselves quite threatening, so they will try and put things in our way and obstacles in our way to stop us doing this kind of thing. We must never give up on hope. We must continue with our faith, and we must always work with love. But from the time of what is called the Tiglia-Mish civilization until now, which is one of the big catastrophes that happened in the past and caused the loss of the ancient wisdom. So, but from the time of what is called the Tiglia-Mish civilization until now, those beings, especially the contemporary ones, chiefly became learned, who learned by rote as much as possible about every kind of vacuous information, such as old women love to relate about what was presumably said in olden times. Oh, you know, our school system's all about learning by rote. Well, we're trying to do a learning where we're going digging deeper, finding the meaning behind the exoteric and discovering the esoteric, which will help us develop the inner side of ourselves and make us work better with the world and become more harmonious with it. And I was reminded the other day, and I've said it in other shows, you know, this doesn't make you a millionaire in a material money sense, because this isn't about being caught up in the lunatic asylum. This work is to help you develop yourself in your soul, so that your soul is what's important. I know we're living a life on this planet and we're trying to get by and live in it as comfortably as we can. But when we're put up with, you know, you must have the best car, the best phone, the best whatever, that's taking you away from soul work. Be nice to have those things, obviously, you know, make our lives a little bit more comfortable. We all want to be able to pay the bills and things like that. But there's something about developing your soul brings an inner peace, which is what we're working towards with this kind of work. And also learning by rote. And as he talks here about how what old women go on about, you know, it's not just old women, but the masses like to live by what they think are aphorisms, but they're not true aphorisms like Gurdjieff speaks about. They're, you know, silly get out clauses of why shit happens, really. You know, and people go on about being superstitious, and we shouldn't be superstitious in this day and age. But I still see people that are not involved in this kind of work at all, and are trying to be rational and trying to be, you know, part of the rat race and fitting in. Yet they still don't walk under ladders, or they don't like it when a black cat crosses before them. So that superstition is still embedded in them in some kind of way. It's quite weird. Note, by the way, that for the definition of the importance of the learned there, our venerated Mullah Nasir ad-Din also has a sentence expressed in the following words. Everybody talks as if our learned know that half 100 is 50. Well, we all know half 100 is 50, or is it? We all want to look like we know everything. Everybody wants to look like they're clever or they've got the answer to everything. But one of the wonderful things about doing this kind of work is honesty. And when we don't know, we have to admit it. And when we're trying to learn things, we're obviously progressing in our intelligence, and gaining knowledge, which will at some point turn into wisdom, which we need to get by in this world. There on your planet, the more of such information one of your favorites mechanically learns by rote, information he himself has never verified, and which moreover he has never sensed, the more learned he is considered to be. Isn't that true? If you can recite your times tables or recite some Shakespeare sonnets or things, so it is, you know, nice to hear people recite Shakespeare sonnets or recite poetry and things. It's even better when they actually know what they're talking about and actually put meaning into it, rather than just doing it by rote and, oh, look at me, how clever I am that I can recite this. And I feel that's quite important, of, you know, make sure what you're learning is something you want to know and do it with a passion. Don't just learn things, you know, and hopefully we've all grown up and left school now, but, you know, we used to be told what to learn, where now we've got the choice to learn what we want to learn and discover and go forward with. And so, my boy, we reached the city of Babylon. There were indeed a great many learned beings there, gathered from almost the whole of that planet of yours. As the causes of the gathering of these beings in the city of Babylon at that time are extremely interesting, I will tell you also about this a little more in detail. The point is that most of the learned beings of the earth, being then assembled there under compulsion by a most peculiar Persian king, under whose dominion at that period was also the city of Babylon. In order to understand thoroughly which fundamental aspect ensuing from the total results of the abnormally established conditions of ordinary being existence there gave rise to the said peculiarity of the Persian king. And doesn't that feel like that's what's been happening with us in this world? We're under abnormally established conditions, and we're trying to make things as normal as possible, more harmonious, really, I would think. What is normal? Who knows? Especially in this lunatic asylum that Gurdjieff tells us that we're, or reminds us that we're living in. We do know we are. So I wanted to do this bit about the psyche. I would recommend you go and read this chapter and learn more about the Babylon times and how it's influenced us in this day and age. You know, I could be here all night if I wanted to read that one. It's quite a few more pages to go yet. So I'm not going to do any more reading, but I am going to just say that, you know, our psyche is important. It can be damaged from the outside world. So we need to make sure our psyche is strong. We ourselves can damage our psyche by wrong thinking and wrong learning, which is why we also need to make sure that we are doing the right kind of work. You know, and obviously I'm advocating the Gurdjieff work here. We have to use our integrity more. And by doing the Gurdjieff work, we learn to sense these things. We start beginning to vibrate at a more natural level, I'm going to say for now. More harmonious level, so we can become more attuned to lies, to old wives' tales, and more attuned to when people try to con us and things like that. It's still, we've got to navigate our way through it. That's fine. We have to, you know, we're always going to be navigating our way through life. But to do that, we need a strong psyche. And we must also remember faith, hope, and love all the way. So thank you for listening to this little show. I just wanted to do a little Gurdjieff one to encourage everyone to continue with Gurdjieff and to keep your psyche strong.